Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. Today we're going to talk about Dark Knight Rises and Knightfall. What do they have in common? Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I am your host, Brent. And I thought we'd have a little discussion today and talk about Dark Knight Rises and how it relates to Knightfall. I just watched Dark Knight Rises this afternoon, and I just finished reading Knight's End, also today as well. And I was thinking about, how they relate to one another. What came from where and how much of an influence of Knightfall was on Dark Knight Rises. And after consuming, Knightfall over the last couple of months here in, quarantine, COVID times or whatever, and then watching Dark Knight Rises, I got to thinking, they kind of don't have much to do with each other at all, which might make this a short video. So, before we get started, like this video down below, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. It helps the channel grow and lets you see my videos when they pop up first. So, Dark Knight Rises, I really like this movie. Let's just get this out of the way. I saw this movie on IMAX opening weekend, and the ending of this movie made me cry. Cry with tears just because I felt it was like the perfect ending to a Batman film that I'd ever seen. I love The Dark Knight, but for me, this is the one that gets me every time. And it got me this afternoon. I had some happy tears at the end of this movie. Just the whole way that the music swells and you see Bruce and Alfred and you have this tie back to the story in the beginning of the movie with Alfred going to this cafe in Florence, once a year when Bruce was missing, thinking that he was going to see Bruce happy, knowing that he made it. And then the whole thing, the way that, Blake gets into the cave and then it rises, and then as the platformer's rising with Blake on it, realizing he's about to, become Batman or whatever, the camera pushes in and it cuts to black just as the platform goes all the way up to the top of the screen. It gets me every time. I'm like, oh, such a masterful movie. But in terms of Knightfall, the only thing that's really similar is Bane, right? And the stuff that's happening here with Bane, in the Knightfall saga doesn't have anything to do with the League of Shadows or League of Assassins, whatever you want to call them. Talia al Ghul doesn't play a part. In fact, Talia al Ghul and Bane don't really interact as characters until Batman Legacy, which was many, many years on after Knightfall had come out at that point. If you want to check out that storyline, there's 2 volumes collecting it. And that's kind of where Bane gets involved with Ra's al Ghul. So, is there some stuff taken from that? A little bit, but the whole idea is basically centered around how Bane is taking over Gotham and using this bomb, this nuclear reactor that's supposed to provide free energy as a bomb to Gotham and as a threat. And that's kind of, what it's all about. In Dark Knight Rises, Batman's not really he's not really a challenge to Bane, so to speak. Bane doesn't come to Gotham looking to defeat Batman in the way that he does in Knightfall, right? Bane shows up to Gotham here, and he's literally there to make sure that, all his plans come to fruition and stuff like that. Pour the concrete in the right place so he can blow it all to smithereens, acquire the bomb by, any means necessary, and all that evolves as the plan goes along. But get Bruce Wayne's fingerprints so they can activate the nuclear reactor, capture the Russian scientists. It's all about getting control of that reactor in order to turn it into a bomb. It's not about confronting Batman at all. When they come to Gotham, they probably think that Batman doesn't really even exist. They know Bruce Wayne's alive, and they know he's Batman because they're League of Shadows, but they don't know if he's going to come out, and face them or whatever. So the entire fight with Bane in the underground, in the waterfalls, whatever, you should really watch this on Blu-ray. I don't have the 4K, but this is what I have. But on disc anyway, you get all the IMAX scenes, and you lose the letterboxing whenever it goes to IMAX and it goes full screen. So it's really the way to watch these movies. But this whole fight is just kind of him getting rid of a fly, basically. It's a distraction from his main plot line. So he sends, he's not even sending Batman, he's not even killing Batman or, unmasking him to the world in order to ruin his life. He literally sends him to a pit far, far away because he thinks he can't get out of it. It's not a punishment of any sort. It's just, you're in my way. I'm going to remove you from out of my way and place you somewhere where I think you can't escape, right? So when Batman shows up, lights the fire on the side of the building, hence the flaming bat signal, right? He's like, impossible, because he didn't think about it at all. He didn't really have the measure of the man in the way that we saw this Bane get the measure of the man and basically calculate everything in order to break him at his weakest. Bane in Dark Knight Rises encounters Bruce at his weakest point, so he doesn't really have to do that much thinking. Like, Bruce has been out of the picture for 8 years for some reason, blah, 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 blah. The Bane here is doing all these calculations and stuff and is weakening Bruce Wayne by, putting him through a gauntlet in the prelude to Knightfall, which is before this volume. Bruce is going up against all these villains, and then I think, is it in this volume or in the prelude, they blow up Arkham Asylum, and he spends most of this volume, Batman does, fighting these other villains until Bane finally steps out of the shadows at the very end of this collection here in order to face off with Batman. So he's like exhausted Batman, he's weakened Batman, Batman's kind of like got a cold at one point, he's very exhausted, he's sick. He just went through the ringer trying to swim his way out of a flooding tunnel. The issue before Bane shows up and he's like rescuing the mayor or some politician and stuff like that. So he's just exhausted. And then Bane shows up and he's like, let's fight to the death, come on. Obviously, and breaks his back. So in a way, like, neither Bane defeated Batman at his strongest, which I would think if you were solely focused on defeating Batman, you would want to go at him right away at his strongest instead of concocting some grand scheme to make him weaker in order to ensure that you'll win. It's like, if you're such a confident fighter, if you're such a confident villain, then why are you going out of your way to belittle somebody and beat them down to ensure that you'll win? If you're so confident, just go after it, But I guess you're not brave enough to take those risks that you're willing to lose, So maybe that's why. But it does make for a good story, and one that's lasted and retold, obviously, as we've gotten Dark Knight Rises. So I think Dark Knight Rises is, it's inspired by Knightfall in the fact that it uses Bane. It still has the back breaking and still has him dropping him on the knee, right here in the underground rain fight, waterfall fight, which is, kind of cool. But there's no snapping. I mean, there's a snap, but it's Bane. It's different because Tom Hardy's not this big. This Bane is actually picking him up, throwing him down on his leg, on his knee there, whereas Tom Hardy just lifts him up and then lets go and puts his knee out there, hoping that Batman will fall on it, and Batman does, and that's how his back is broken there. So it's a little bit different, and it's almost not as intentional, I think, maybe. Whereas this clearly is I'm going to break you. What does he say? Yes, instead I will simply break you. I love that. I don't know why I did a Russian voice for Bane. He's from Santa Prisca, which is, I think, in Latin America or in the Caribbean somewhere. So he's probably got a little bit of a Spanish accent or something like that. I'm sorry. Anyway, I think big, strong guy. I think Russians. I don't know. My apologies. But I think Dark Knight Rises, lifts a little bit from Knightfall, but it's not a Knightfall storyline. So if you want to walk around and say oh yeah, Knightfall was adapted to, in Dark Knight Rises, well, it kind of was and kind of wasn't. I mean, when you read Knightfall, that whole crux is, Bane taking Batman apart in order to beat him. Whereas in Dark Knight Rises, Batman's already been taken apart, and Bane just kind of swats him away a little bit. And then you add in all the League of Shadows stuff, the intrigue from Batman Begins, and all those callbacks, and it turns into a completely different story, in my opinion. So, are they inspired by? Yeah, but I would not call Dark Knight Rises an adaptation of Knightfall in any manner whatsoever. So, thank you guys for watching here on BK's Bullets. I love to bring you guys some comic book content, some comic book commentary, reviews, overviews of new collections that come out whenever I get them, unboxings of statues or action figures, all that sorts of thing. I'm very Batman heavy, but I do like to read other things. And thank you guys for watching. As always, we will see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.